Okay, and welcome back. Thank you for joining Nick Gaming for the second video. Now, to start this video off, we want to work on turning the character. So if I play the game right now, it's so interesting. Wow. So let's go here. I'm going to create a folder. The folder will be named Scripts. In the Scripts folder, I'm sorry. So I right click, and then I go to Create Folder. You can also click Assets, Create Folder. Then I will go in here, I will right click, create C# script, which I will name the player controller, but feel free to name it whatever you want. And now I will open up my Visual Studios. Currently I am using Visual Studios 2019 just because I never updated it. And I'm sure if you've seen those little errors in my, or not errors, but warnings in my editor, it's just saying, hey, update your Visual Studio. And I'm like, I don't want to. I'm lazy. Okay, now on the player controller itself, we're going to want to capture a few things. The first thing we want is the transform of the player, but we don't actually need that since this will be put on the player itself. So what we should get is that barrel end. So I'm going to make a public, with a lowercase p, a public transform with a capital T, and I will name this barrel end. Now this will be assigned in the inspector, so I'm going to give it a header which will add a note in the inspector. This does nothing for the code itself. And the header, you can write whatever message that you want to help yourself, but I will say where we instantiate the shots. Now, I also want a shot prefab. This will be the shot that we shoot from the barrel end. So again, I'm going to say public, and then this one will be a transform as well. Public transform, and I'm going to call this the shot prefab. You can make a game object if you want, but I find with how I'm using it, it's just easier to keep it as transform. I really don't find much difference between the transform and the game object. Okay, and for the header, I'm going to say the shot that we shoot, and then let's see what is next. Okay, so now that we've got the shot, which we will create later, we want to create a list of shots. So I'm going to say this one can actually be private. So let's say private list, transform, and we'll name this shots, and we'll initialize it to be a new list transform. And we don't need to, well actually we can't add a header, so instead I'm going to add a comment. So this will be all of the shots that we instantiate so we can reuse them when they are inactive and save memory. Because I did use this without this, where I just created and destroyed a bunch of shots, and it really slowed down the game. So yeah, this speeds it up. Then we actually want some bad guys, and for this we'll just grab the game object of the bad guy. So I'll name a public game object, and I will say bad guy prefab. Feel free to give it a more interesting name. And as the header, I'm going to say the the bad guy that we instantiate. Okay. And of course, since we are instantiating bad guys, we want a list of them so that way we can reuse them after they have been, I guess, killed. Because if we destroy our game objects, it can really slow down the game. So we're going to create another private list, and we're going to make this a list of transforms again, and we're going to name this bad guys, and we're going to make it a list of transform. And I did something wrong. Needs to be a new list transform. That's it. And it's private, so we can't add a header, so I will add a comment. So all of the bad guys that we attack the player with. Now we need a few extra things. For example, we'll need our game over screen, which we'll create later. So I'm going to name a public game object game over screen, and as my header, this will be the screen that displays when we lose. You can do something similar to this if you want it to be where you win after killing 10 to 50 enemies, and then just count that. But yeah, that's up to you. I also want to track the score text, so I'll say public text. Now here's the thing, we need to import text, so I'm going to press space, Control Z, so it undoes it. Another thing you can do is text space and then just backspace to text and space out. And I will call this the score text. Now we have an error, so I'm going to go over here, click on the yellow flashlight, and add using Unity Engine UI. Another thing you can do is you can just type it up here. So you can type using Unity Engine, make sure it's not editor, .ui, and then a semicolon. And I need to add I should add a header here as well. So this will be the place where we display the score. And you say, but Nicothan, we don't have a score yet. And I don't know why I feel like that sounded like, gosh, that guy from Frozen. So let's make a private int score, and we'll initialize that as 0. And you'll see this in use later, but I'm going to say a private int next bad guy boost, which I will say is 5. We also need a delay on spawning the bad guys, so I'm going to say a private int delay equals 0, a private, well, these are private, so I'm just going to use a comma, private int max delay, which I want to set to, I guess, 50 is good. You can change it as you want. And then I also need a max bad guys, which I will set to 1. And you know what, these are all private ints, so I'm just going to string them all together like this. So as long as you have a comma, it will make everything the private int, like here. Okay, I will also create a boolean which will help us see if the game is active or not. So private bool is game active, and I'll initialize that as true. The other thing that we want is a rotation and movement speed, and these will be floats. So private float rotation equals 0, and movement speed, which I like to set at 10. I feel like that's a good movement for me, but you can change it however you like through your own testing. Now at the, oh yes, I am sorry, let's add some text here, or some comments. So let's actually make this multi-line. So let's say score is to track the player score as they kill, as they eliminate, make that sound nicer, bad guys. Okay, let's say next bad guy boost will add 1 to the max bad guys when score is greater. Delay will track time before we play another, before we try to play another bad guy. Max delay is the time between delays. Max bad guys is the maximum number of bad guys that can be active at once. That way we don't flood the screen with bad guys. Okay, add a few more comments. So tells us if the game is active or not, and then controls the player's rotation as they look around. Okay, now everything has a comment or a header on it, so you know exactly what it is. I want to do one last thing where I will say hashtag region variables, just so this doesn't take up so much space. And there I come to the bottom and I say end region variables. It's very important that you have an end region to a region. Now I can shrink it down like that. So starting in the next video, we'll work on moving around and adding in a few methods that we need. So let's save this, and as always, thank you very much for watching the video, and I look forward to having you join the next video.